territories' health system. We further agree with the UN Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in the Palestinian territories, Ms. Francesca Albanese, when she recently highlighted that the continuation of Israel's impunity and exceptionalism is no longer viable, especially in light of the binding UN Security Council Resolution 2728, which called for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. In this respect, we call on the international community to act to bring the perpetrators to justice and ensure accountability for the victims and their families. Unfortunately, due to my experiences of the letters and other actions, I can't tell you how to act because that is often used against me. But I can tell you to be activists. I won't tell you what to do, but be activists. The evidence that we have of the mass killings of civilians points to the perpetration of war crimes, crimes against humanity, which include murder and extermination, and genocide, as defined in Articles 6, 7, and 8 of the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, as well as violations of the 1949 Geneva Conventions, specifically the Fourth Geneva Convention relative to the protection of civilian persons in a time of war, as well as customary international humanitarian law. International humanitarian law prohibits attacks on civilians and non-combatants, underlying the need to protect human life during times of war. I hope in this university, your lecturers encourage you to refer to international humanitarian law and international human rights law, and not to use phrases that are coined by unilateral actors of global rules-based system. The rules are international human rights law, international humanitarian law. There are no other rules. It's not football here. We're a world community, and we have conventions and protocols that we ratify in our parliaments, and it is those that set the rules. There's no other global rule-based world order. It's not. Conventions and protocols signed by us. Laws we frame. So don't be bamboozled, because when someone is saying rules-based, they mean do what I want. They don't mean the laws we've all signed on to. So don't be fooled. And if your lecturers use that rules-based thing, just challenge them. It is clear from international law that states have to ensure that non-combatants are protected, even in times of war. As South Africa, we were really appalled and disgusted by the recent grim discovery of a mass grave containing the remains of over 200 Palestinian civilians at Nasser Hospital in Gaza. This followed the reported discovery of mass graves at Al-Shifa Hospital. These grim findings necessitate immediate and comprehensive investigations to ensure justice and accountability. The International Criminal Court has jurisdiction over the situation in Palestine, and we have previously called on the Office of the Prosecutor to urgently lead a thorough and impartial investigation into this matter, one that complies with international legal standards, to establish the facts and bring those responsible to justice. It is the collective duty of the international community to ensure that atrocities of this nature are duly prosecuted in terms of the Rome Statute and the Geneva Conventions. If all of this were happening in Africa, they would have already issued warrants. It took 3 weeks to issue warrants on Putin, 7 months, nothing on Prime Minister Netanyahu and his ministers. We are equally concerned as South Africa with Israel's use of starvation as a weapon of war. Israeli human rights group B'Tselem has recently issued a new report, Manufacturing Famine, which concludes that Israel has been committing the crime of starvation under international law in the Gaza Strip. According to the report, the severe hunger that has developed over recent months in the Gaza Strip is the product of a deliberate and conscious Israeli policy. It has been openly declared by decision makers, including a member of the Israeli War Cabinet, from the very beginning of the war, not in the middle, not later, right at the start. For months, Israel has pursued a policy of total blockade, complete destruction of the possibility of local food production through farming or fishing, and restrictions on the delivery of aid. The result of this policy is millions of starving people. Now imagine the NSFAS recipients. If you were denied access to your allowance, totally denied, no food whatsoever. This is what's happening to the people of Palestine, and we are silent. We should all be going on hunger strike until they have food, even if it's once a week, something to show our solidarity. During Israel's blockade, Israel's years of blockade on Gaza, it has studied how much food Gaza's residents need to survive. Israel has drafted mathematical formulae and put together caloric tables for this purpose. As B'Tselem points out in its report, this means Israel entered the war with a vast amount of knowledge about the needs of Gaza's population and made a conscious choice to deny them, pushing hundreds of thousands of people into hunger and using starvation as a method of warfare. This is full dehumanization and nothing else. The dehumanization of Palestinians in Israeli eyes has accelerated in recent months. According to the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, in March this year, 2.2 million people, almost 100% of the population in Gaza, were experiencing phase 3 level food insecurity or worse. 1.17 million were at phase 4, and nearly 500,000 people were experiencing the highest level of food insecurity, phase 5. In early April, Samantha Power, who heads the United States Agency for International Development, assessed that famine was already occurring in northern Gaza. The assessment was given during a hearing of the US House Foreign Affairs Committee. This was the first time a US official declared that famine was already present in Gaza after months of warnings that the hunger crisis was escalating. For many months, Israel has prevented the required scope of humanitarian relief, including food and medicines, from entering the Gaza Strip, and particularly northern Gaza. The destruction that Israel sowed during the fighting has obliterated the ability to grow food, as I said earlier, and caused an almost entire reliance on outside aid, which aid is controlled by Israel. Israel is failing to meet its obligations in this regard by not allowing sufficient aid to enter the Strip, and by failing to guarantee the safe arrival of the aid to its destination, even in areas it says are under its control. A concrete criminal prohibition on starvation is set out in the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. Starvation of civilians is defined as a war crime under the ICC's jurisdiction, and they have to investigate and prosecute. Imagine 1 million signatures to the ICC saying we are waiting for you to prosecute. The Rome Statute definition of starvation is intentionally using starvation of civilians as a method of warfare by depriving them of objects indispensable to their survival, including willfully impeding relief supplies. So, in conclusion, in memory of Shireen Abu Akleh, we all continue to call on the ICC to prosecute these war crimes and to issue arrest warrants for those leaders in Israel who have ordered and presided over these crimes. The slowness to investigate and prosecute those responsible for these war crimes necessitates greater mobilization among the youth and civil society around the globe to ensure that justice for Palestinians is realized. As I have said, it is time for collective action by you and for us to champion the call for implementation of UN resolutions and rulings of the world's highest court. Your voice on this in social media, in protest, in petitions, would be immeasurably important. We owe this responsiveness to the people of Palestine and to the memory of our dear departed Shireen Abu Akleh. I thank you for having allowed me this opportunity.